Hi there, my name is Justin Hutto. I'm a representative of IIR Energy, and in this video, I'm going to give you an insight look into the EnergyLive platform. In this video, I'm going to show you how to run an offline event search within EnergyLive. So once we're inside of the database, under search tools, we'll find the offline event search link. Click that and we'll be brought into the offline event search tool. So once the search tool is loaded up, you can see that there's quite a few ways that we can filter out the offline events that we'll eventually be able to analyze once we run this search. So the first way that we're going to be able to filter those offline events is by the time frame of said event. So we've got the option to sort or filter both by kickoff time frame and an ongoing time frame. So kickoff is essentially referring to the start date of an offline event, whereas ongoing would refer to any offline event despite its start date that is offline in the time frame that we select. So for example's sake, we'll go ahead and say all offline events that will be online over the next 90 days despite their start date. So these are going to include a few forward-looking offline events within our results once we run this search. Following the option to refine our search by time frame, we can also do so by the event type in terms of it being planned or unplanned. The event cause as well is something we can filter out our search by or search results by. We can also filter our results by the event duration and any comments as to the cause of the event. We can use keywords to filter our search results by specific causes as well. For example, if we were to include the keyword COVID, then any outages that are tied to the current pandemic would show up in our search results for this particular search. Following that first section, we'll get into the option to refine our search by geography. So of course, we've got our world regions in the top here. We can also get a bit more specific into the regions we want to refine our search by with this onshore and offshore geography option here. Beyond that, though, we can also get into both NERC and ISOs as far as the regions for offline events we'd like to look at goes. So I'll go ahead and choose MISO for example's sake to get a healthy sample size there. But for many of you power traders and analysts, I think that's a really neat feature that we have here to be able to look at, relevant regions that you all work with on a daily basis. Beyond that, we can skip past some of these other regions that aren't going to be relevant to us in this video, and then that'll bring us to a few options that we can use to filter out our eventual results by plant and unit details. So if you know the plant name, we can include that here. Same goes for the plant owner and operator. But probably what's going to be most used for many of you watching this video, as far as this section goes at least, is going to be refining a search by the fuel and energy source type. So you've got options for all of your fossil fuel powered plants, as you can see in this column here. Same goes for renewables, and of course we've got the option for nuclear powered plants as well. Going forward, really the last section that's going to be relevant to us is this capacity section. So you can set a minimum or maximum threshold for capacity offline for the set of offline events that you'd like to analyze. So just for example's sake, I'll go ahead and set a minimum threshold of 5 megawatts. And once all possible units of measure populate, we'll go ahead and find electricity within this list, or megawatts, and go ahead and select that, and we'll go ahead and run this query. Alright, so as we can see, we've got 356 units that will be offline over the next 90 days in MISO that have at least 5 megawatts of offline capacity. So once we're in this search results page, we can leverage this data in a number of ways. So the first somewhat obvious way is going to be that we can sort all of this data in the native Excel-like table here with all of these field or column options up top here. In addition to that, you can also map all of these offline events to see where they are geographically. And if you were to click on any one of the icons representing an offline unit, we'll get some color on it. So you'll see the amount of offline capacity, the type of fuel that the unit is powered by, and if you were to click this View Detail button, you'll be brought to the outage report, which we explain in great detail on our first video in this series, in which I covered the home page widget setup. There's also a lot of ways to graph this data right here within our online database. One of the ways I think might be most beneficial is using this daily offline totals graph that is shown under the output usage section there. So once the graph populates, we're going to make sure we're looking at capacity offline, not just the count of units offline. And once we do that, we can see a graph split up by the unit usage. So you've got base load, intermediate load, and peak load units split up there within this graph. And of course, as you set the filters for the search that you're going to run to more relevant filters, this graph will be more relevant to your analysis. Okay, so within EnergyLive, there's a couple of final ways I want to point out in which you're able to leverage the search results that we're seeing here. So one of those ways is going to be the option to export all of this data to an Excel CSV. So to do that, just like we have a hyperlink for the Map It and PDF tool here, there's going to be a third hyperlink that will appear when you're actually subscribed to EnergyLive that will say export. So you'll simply click that hyperlink and you'll have the option to name your file whatever you'd like it to be. And from there, you'll get a CSV with all of the fields that we're seeing within this native table, as well as additional fields that will populate from our unit and plant profiles as well. In addition to the option to export, I also want to point out this saved search and tracking list option to the top right. So the saved search option is essentially going to allow us to quickly get back to this list of search results without having to re-choose the filters that we chose to get to this specific list of results. So that said, I'll go ahead and go through an example of how to create a saved search. I'll call this one video example final, and then click create. So once we do that, there's a couple of final steps that we'll have to take to actually be able to leverage this feature. So what we'll have to do is click this Manage Offline Event Save Searches hyperlink that will appear right under our table of saved searches. And then find the saved search we just made. I named ours Video Example Final. There it is at the bottom. Then we'll click this computer icon. And once that icon appears on the On column to the far left, that signifies that whenever we go back home, our saved search will appear under saved searches within this table right here on our home page. So what we can do from there is simply click this green arrow, which signifies running the query. So we'll click that, and then we'll be brought back to the exact same list of search results that we just left. Next up, I want to get into some details on this tracking list option. So this tracking list option will allow us to essentially track any status changes, in particular offline events that are important to us. So for example's sake, I'll select a couple of these offline events. happening at this Acadia Energy Center. So what will happen after I follow all of the steps to set up this tracking list is whenever there's a status change at these two units, whether that be a change in the start and end date of this forward-looking offline event, or if there's a change in the capacity offline that's expected to happen when these offline events start, whatever the case might be, if there's a change, we'll get an email about it. So to set that up, we'll click save and then follow a similar procedure as we did in the saved search option. So I'll actually name it the exact same title as our saved search. And then again, we'll go back home and we'll get into the back end of our options for tracking list. We'll find the tracking list that we just made. So again, once we click that computer icon and it shows up on this on column, we'll know that we'll see this tracking list on our home page. But in addition to that, to set up our email alerts, what we'll do is click this mailer icon, and then here is where we'll be able to decide exactly what time of day we'll get our daily update on the status changes of the list of offline events that are within this tracking list, if there are any status changes within that day. So with that, we'll go back home, and under tracking list, we should see the video example final tracking list that we just made. Okay, so we see it here, so we're good to go on that front. Now, whenever we go back to our home page and we want to see the actual offline events that have had a status change within the tracking list, we'll just click this show hyperlink, and that will bring up the number of offline events that we've included in a tracking list that have had an update. In this case, it's going to be 0. But when there are a number of offline events that have updated since the last time you looked into a tracking list, there will be a number above 0 here that will be hyperlinked. So as an example of that, I'm going to see which one of these saved searches that I've got up here. Okay, so our first one has a number of new offline events since the last time I've looked into some of these example saved searches I've done for clients. And this is also, a good point to look into for our actual saved search option here to see all of the offline events that are new within the query that we made for any of these saved searches. So this updated option to the right, which is also the same meeting for the updated column here, is essentially going to show the number of offline events that have had an update, likely probably within the start and end date of that offline event. Whereas on the left hand side here, this new option or new number will show the number of offline events that are new that fit within the criteria that we set for each of these offline event saved searches. So what we'll do, both for our saved searches and our tracking lists that have had updates since the last time we looked at them, we'll just click on the hyperlink for the number of updates or new units, and that'll bring us to essentially a search results page just for those units that are, in this case, that are new within the offline event criteria that we set. But in the case of a tracking list, it'll be a list of search results for all of the offline events that have had an update, again, likely within the start and end date of that offline event since the last time we've looked into that tracking list that we saved. So that said, that will conclude this overview of our offline event search tool within EnergyLive. So thank you very much for watching. If you aren't a user yet, I look forward to setting you up with a free trial to this analytical tool. And if you are a user, then I look forward to serving and assisting you in whatever way I can going forward. Thanks for watching.